Breaking tonight, a historic moment in the 2016 presidential race. A year-long FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server scandal is over, ending with a devastating account of how the former Secretary of State has systematically misled the American people for 16 months about almost every facet of this scandal. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. More than 16 months ago, Americans learned that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was conducting the business of the U.S. government from a private email account managed on her own private email server kept at her home in New York, outside the purview of the federal government or its controls for classified communications, immediately sparking concerns that the nation's top diplomat may have compromised America's top secrets. Mrs. Clinton downplayed it all, and her top aides dismissed the people's criticism of her actions as, quote, absurd. The FBI launched an investigation, and hours ago, FBI Director James Comey announced his agency's findings. The FBI director finding the evidence does not support criminal charges against Mrs. Clinton, but absolutely supports a finding that she misled the American people over and over and over again while under federal investigation. For example, Mrs. Clinton argued right from the get-go that she never sent or received any classified information on her personal email. Watch.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified materials.
I never sent or received any classified material. They are retroactively classifying it.
From the group of 30,000 emails returned to the State Department in 2014, 110 emails in 52 email chains have been determined by the owning agency to contain classified information at the time they were sent or received.
They were classified at the time they were sent or received. This is not a matter of retroactive classification. That was another misleading statement from the Clinton camp. Next, Mrs. Clinton's repeated claim that she turned over all official emails to investigators and that the American people could trust her, that there were none lurking on her private server or inappropriately withheld from the State Department once she got caught with the private server, that she was hiding nothing. Well, listen to that.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
The FBI also discovered several thousand work-related emails that were not among the group of 30,000 emails returned by Secretary Clinton to State in 2014.
In any way, it was turned over, except the FBI director says no. Some of these work-related emails she failed to turn over were actually also classified, according to Director Comey. Next, Mrs. Clinton said that she only used a personal email because she didn't want to carry more than one email device.
Thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two.
Secretary Clinton used several different servers and administrators of those servers during her 4 years at the State Department. And she also used numerous mobile devices to send and to read email on that personal domain.
Next, Mrs. Clinton claimed her unprecedented email setup was permitted by the rules.
It was allowed, and the rules have been clarified since I left about the practice.
None of these emails should have been on any kind of unclassified system. They were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
The FBI director went on to say that no reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position could have believed that they were acting appropriately. Next, Mrs. Clinton has repeatedly assured the country that America's secrets were safe, despite their presence on her home server.
It had numerous safeguards. It was on property guarded by the Secret Service, and there were no security breaches.
We assess it is possible that hostile actors gained access to Secretary Clinton's personal email account.
Director Comey found the world's most notorious hackers knew about Mrs. Clinton's email and said it is conceivable they have everything, although the FBI is not able to prove that, he said. However, after all that, Director Comey said he had to conclude that the former Secretary of State likely committed no crime here.
In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts.
The director explaining that in similar cases, there has been evidence that the target intended to disclose classified material, that there was obvious disloyalty to the United States or obstruction of justice, none of which he found present in this case. Joining us tonight on all of this, Republican Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, who today said the FBI announcement, quote, defies explanation and sets a, quote, terrible precedent. He'll be here in moments. Plus, former Assistant FBI Director James Kallstrom is here with news on what he's hearing from former and current agents who work for the FBI. But we begin tonight with Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume. Brit, great to see you. Your thoughts?
Thanks, Megyn. Well, you did a very good job there of setting forth just how Comey's statement just blew up this tissue of lies that has been told by Secretary Clinton throughout this case, ending, of course, with his conclusion that while, as he put it at one point, there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, then he goes on to say our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. So he didn't really find necessarily that she hadn't committed a crime. He just said that he didn't think it was a crime that should be prosecuted, which is a different matter entirely, and goes well beyond what one might have expected an FBI director to recommend to the department, perhaps, or to say publicly, which makes this whole procedure today more than a little unusual, Megyn, because if you think about it, if he didn't think it was worth prosecuting, all he had to do, when you think about it, is simply turn over his findings to the Department of Justice and leave it to the Department of Justice to make what he described as a prosecutive decision. He declined to do that. In fact, I think what he probably thought, Megyn, was that if he did that, there wasn't any chance that the department would bring charges. And if you start thinking about the Obama Justice Department, with Loretta Lynch at its head, formerly headed by Eric Holder, the most credible person in the whole place that anybody's ever heard of is James Comey of the FBI. And it's not too much to suggest here, it seems to me, Megyn, that he has placed his credibility at the service of what he knew would be the ultimate outcome of this case once it was referred to the Justice Department. And in that sense, he did this administration, this Attorney General, and perhaps it's not unfair to say Hillary Clinton a very great service, although, as I say, he did blow up her whole network of lies that she told over time.
Well, I mean, he seemed to be saying, we're going to get into the law after you in our next segment, but he seemed to be saying to me, this is how I interpreted it, that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case like this because the history doesn't support cases like this. When these cases are brought, it's for intentional actions that undermine the security of the United States. And if you look at the ones that have been brought, it's where somebody intentionally stole documents from their government agency, downloaded them on their personal device, kept them at home, lied to the FBI when they got caught, tried to throw the device into a river, that kind of thing. And he is right that there isn't a case that looks much like this one. However, the recitation of the lies, Britt, I mean, he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't, and I think in that sense he did. Basically what he said is she did everything short of a crime and then lied about it all the way.
While she was being investigated. I don't know if she lied to him, but she repeatedly told the American people a bunch of nonsense.
Well, that's true. I mean, and this sets that forth completely. One thing that he didn't quite get to was you notice along the way, Megyn, Secretary Clinton changed her claim from there was no classified information to there was no information marked classified, and that was a complete deception from the jump, because information is not classified because it's marked because it's classified.
And he took that on directly.
Well, he basically blew that up too, if you think about it.
But Britt, what do you think? You've been saying that all along, and he agrees with you, and not with Mrs. Clinton, who also knows better. But my question for you, Britt, is whether this makes any difference. Her dishonesty numbers are already through the roof. The Democrats so far have not shown a huge inclination toward Trump. So how does this play in the political race?
Well, look, there's still a significant body of undecided voters out there, enough to make the election go one way or the other. And this takes out of Hillary Clinton's arsenal any effective weapon claiming that Donald Trump is irresponsible and possibly reckless. She has now been found by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to have engaged in extreme carelessness in the handling of the nation's most sensitive information. That is really damning. It would, under ordinary circumstances, it would rule out a candidate for president. But this is a peculiar year under peculiar circumstances. She's up against a candidate who's got about 40% support, and he seems to have trouble breaking out of that, and is distrusted by many voters. But make no mistake about it, she carries this burden into the fall, and it will be with her all the way. And it is all kinds of fuel for the Trump campaign if it uses it effectively.
Mm-hmm. All they need is Director Comey. I mean, that's all they need is him. He should be in every ad Trump runs, because Trump doesn't have to say a word. He just has to point to the director of the FBI. Britt, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Megyn.
One of the fiercest reactions to Director Comey's remarks today came from Speaker Paul Ryan. He will join us live in a Kelly File exclusive on why he thinks this decision creates a very big problem in the future. Plus, former FBI Deputy Director James Kallstrom has been talking with former and current FBI agents today. He's next on what he's hearing from inside the Bureau on this decision. And what about the investigation into the Clinton Foundation? That never came up today. And we'll investigate the reason why when we come right back.
This program is brought to you by Subaru. Love, it's what...
We are getting some late-breaking details tonight that suggest Hillary Clinton may not be completely in the clear. Despite today's FBI ruling on her emails, we are learning that the Clinton Foundation may still be the subject of its own investigation. Director Comey made no mention of the foundation today or whether the FBI is investigating it at all. Former FBI Assistant Director in Charge, James Kallstrom, is next on what his FBI sources are telling him. But first, we go to Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with the very latest. Catherine?
Megyn, the Republican chairman of the House Government Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, spoke with Director Comey today after his statement at FBI headquarters and pressed him on whether there would be no charges for Clinton's aides who mishandled classified information and whether all investigations connected to Clinton are now closed.
I specifically asked him, what about the other people? What about the IT guy? What about the inner circle? What about the other things? And he quickly said, I can't tell you about that yet. So I didn't mean to read that as yes, there's something going, or no, there's not. He simply said he could not discuss that at this point.
Fox News first reported in January, based on multiple sources, that the FBI was investigating the possible intersection of State Department business and the Clinton Foundation and whether public corruption laws were violated. Cheryl Mills, Clinton's then chief of staff at the State Department, sent at least twice information to the Clinton Foundation, later deemed classified. In one case, the information was specifically flagged to the foundation because of an upcoming trip to Africa by Bill Clinton. Today, Director Comey read his statement and uncharacteristically did not take questions from reporters. He seemed to anticipate the backlash.
I know there will be intense public debate in the wake of this recommendation, as there was throughout the investigation. What I can assure the American people is that this investigation was done honestly, competently, and independently. No outside influence of any kind was brought to bear.
3 current or former FBI agents told Fox tonight that they were surprised, even disgusted by the director's statement. One agent, recently retired, said it was a very sad day when it comes to integrity. Megyn.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joining me now with more, James Kallstrom, former assistant director in charge of the FBI. Jim, good to see you tonight. Your reaction to what we saw from Director Comey today, who you've said in the past you think is a straight shooter.
Yeah, I have defended him in the past, but those days are over, Megyn. You know, I thought the events of the last week, there was something fishy going on, and you know, here he does. He goes through the whole charging memo. You know, he reads every bit, every paragraph of it, and then he comes to that nonsensical conclusion that really wasn't his to make. And I talked to 2 prosecutors today, actually, that would take that case in a heartbeat. And I've talked to about 15 different agents, both on the job and outside the job, that are, you know, that are basically worried about the reputation of the agency they love, that they worked hard for all their life. And it's not Comey's right to sully that reputation and to soil that reputation. And I don't know what got over the guy. I mean, I don't understand where he's coming from. I mean, it really makes no sense, Megyn.
What do you think? I mean, do you think he was under political pressure? Because, you know, I don't know personally, but the reports are this is a Republican guy, that he's been fair and tough on both sides.
Well, I can only guess that. I don't know. I'm not a fly on the wall inside the FBI headquarters, but I have to think that he got beat up and he played the game. Probably they were going to hand it off to the Justice Department for the decision without his comment, right. But that thing in Phoenix probably put an end to that.
The airplane meeting on the tarmac between Bill Clinton and the Attorney General Lynch.
Exactly. So they called on him to do it, and I sure wish he hadn't done it. You know, lying has got to be quite an act. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying he bent to political pressure. But lying in Washington is a hard thing to explain to your children and your grandchildren, and it's just something that goes on day in and day out. It's not what this country was founded on. It's not what this country's about.
Do you make any accounting, Jim, because we talked about this, we're going to talk about the lawyers right after you, for his statement that, look, I get it, and he went through what he said were, clearly, he didn't call them lies or misstatements, but when you match up what he said with what she said, it's clear. But his point was, in all the other cases they looked at, and you got to believe Comey's lying to reject this, right? He says all the other cases they looked at, there was evidence of intent to steal the documents or intent to undermine national security.
Well, when you tell your staff to remove the classified markings, in some of those, they don't even need intent. So I think that's a red herring.
Jim, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Well, Director Comey's decision not to charge Mrs. Clinton had researchers scouring the Justice Department for the results from similar cases. One that got a lot of attention today concerned retired Navy Commander Brian Nishimura. Now, he pleaded guilty to transferring classified data to a personal computer and got himself a fine and 2 years probation. Navy Chief Petty Officer Lyle White also moved classified materials to a personal hard drive, but admitted he knew he should not. And he was fined $10,000, sentenced to 2 months in confinement. And John Deutsch, former head of the CIA, needed to be pardoned by President Bill Clinton to escape similar charges. But one major difference between these cases and Hillary Clinton's was that these men ultimately admitted they knew the classified materials were indeed vulnerable. Joining me now, Shannon Coffin, former DOJ Civil Division Assistant Deputy Attorney General, and he served as counsel to Vice President Dick Cheney, and Matthew Miller, who served as spokesperson to former Attorney General Eric Holder. Good to see you both. So let me start with you, Matthew, as somebody who used to defend this Justice Department, not Ms. Lynch's, but Mr. Holder's, on whether you believe, because here's what the critics say. They say that this statute requires gross negligence. That's what had to be proven. And they say, Director Comey's statement that they couldn't prove intent to harm the United States, intent to, transfer secrets, that's not in the statute. So they say he was writing something into the statute that wasn't there. What say you?
So let's talk about gross negligence. I think, to show gross negligence here, if you were to charge Hillary Clinton with gross negligence for receiving emails that she didn't know were classified, you would have to charge everyone else who received those emails, someone that sent those emails. Let's remember, as he said today, these were email chains with replies from a number of people. You'd have to charge them all under the same statute. Those would be career officials, those would be political officials, and you'd set a precedent that any time a government official received or sent classified information that they knew or that they didn't know was classified, that they'd be subject to criminal charges. And I can tell you, having worked in the government, if you went back and looked through my emails, and I think this is true of most officials who regularly deal with classified information, you would probably find things that are arguably classified because the area is murky, it's gray at times, and it's just not something that supports criminal charges. And I think Director Comey was right when he said that no prosecutor would reasonably bring such a case.
Shannon?
Look, you don't have to charge anyone else. There may be someone else in her inner core, but no one else, Megyn, established their own server for the entire purpose of avoiding public scrutiny. As my friend Stuart Baker said to me earlier today, that Hillary Clinton was much more concerned about the GOP getting her documents than the Chinese or the Russians. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem.
But the issue is whether, and I'll start with you on this, Shannon, the issue is whether the courts have written this intent requirement into the statute, basically, whether the Supreme Court in case history has basically said, there's some 1941 case that her defenders are citing, that, look, this statute, it's kind of sketchy to begin with.
No, it's not, Megyn.
This is what they say. This is what they say, right? And they say that you can't bring a prosecution against somebody if you can't show one of those that she intended to compromise national security.
No, there's no judicial gloss on this statute. It requires gross negligence. And Megyn, 1924A, the other statute,
the misdemeanor statute that Petraeus got indicted under,
that Comey mentioned, doesn't require intent to profit, doesn't require intent to harm the national security.
Right?
No. All it requires is that the intent to take this document that's classified and put it somewhere where it shouldn't be. That's the only intent that's required. You can prove that to a jury in a heartbeat.
Matthew, why not then? Why not charge her at least under that misdemeanor statute?
It requires knowledge that these documents were classified, and then you move them knowing that they were classified. One, she didn't know that here. Two, we hear a lot about the private server, and it's fair to say that it was a mistake to set it up, and it's fair to question it in terms of records management. But really, for criminal charges, it doesn't make a bit of difference whether those emails were on a private server or whether they were on a state.gov server that was unclassified. And
let me ask you a quick question, Matthew, before we go. Did you hear the open of the show?
I did.
So what about all of those things she said that were not true? Does that as a defender of hers here, does that bother you?
So, I'm not ready to give full credence to what Jim Comey said today. One of the things that really troubles me, when the department brings these type of cases, they're supposed to, if they want to make these kind of charges, they're supposed to put them in indictment, back them up by facts, and let them stand in court where they can be defended by the other party.
So he's
Jim
lying
Comey didn't
that the
give us that
documents weren't
opportunity.
classified?
I don't believe that he's lying, but unfortunately, by standing up and making this type of statement, clearly outside the realm of outside the bounds of DOJ rules, without actually providing any of that evidence, he's put the Clinton campaign in a really difficult situation in some points. With his statement,
Director
for example,
Comey has really put Hillary Clinton in a difficult position.
It's absolutely true. Let me give you an example. With his statement,
nothing to do with her. All right, I gotta go. But you know what, Britt Hume, our previous guest, you know what his saying is? Winners take responsibility, losers blame others. This is not a good moment. And she has taken responsibility. She has. Has she? Really?
She has. She has a number of times. She's taken responsibility. She said it was a mistake.
First she refused to say it was a mistake. Then she was like, I guess it was a mistake.
And she said it repeatedly.
She takes responsibility like my kids take responsibility.
All right, I gotta go. Thanks to you both for being here. Speaker Paul Ryan is standing by. He's next to explain why he thinks this causes big problems for the future. Plus, we'll ask him about a new controversy for the Trump campaign. Plus, while Democrats used the terror attack in Orlando to push for new gun laws, they're strangely silent about the horror that unfolded in the president's hometown of Chicago this weekend. That is just ahead.
From the world headquarters of Fox News, it's The Kelly File with Megyn Kelly.
Former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom just told us how some folks at the Bureau are in disbelief over today's announcement from Director Comey. And our next guest says not only does he think the decision defies explanation, he thinks it helps create the impression that some folks in Washington believe Hillary Clinton is above the law. Joining me now in a Kelly File exclusive, House Speaker Paul Ryan. Mr. Speaker, good of you to be here tonight. Thank you for being here.
Good to be with you, Megyn. Thanks for having me.
So why do you say that people are going to believe that she's above the law? Because the FBI director, by all accounts, a straight shooter, says no reasonable prosecutor would have brought this case.
He basically spent a number of minutes walking through how she not only mishandled classified information, how she was grossly negligent. It seemed to me as he was going through his case that he was going to recommend prosecution, only then he recommended against prosecution. People have been convicted for far less. And the point is, yes, this certainly does underscore the belief that the Clintons live above the law. And this is one of the reasons why people are so dissatisfied, so upset about government. They think that people live by a different set of rules. And the Clintons, they take the candle on this one. I'd say a couple of things, Megyn. Number one, the FBI should give us all of their findings. They should release all of their findings of this information. She's actually competing for a commander-in-chief here. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a whole accounting that needs to happen. Number two, we're going to have hearings. Jason Chaffetz, chairman of the Government Oversight Committee, is going to be calling up James Comey to ask questions. He didn't answer any questions with the press, and our Judiciary Committee has sent a number of questions. There are a lot of unanswered questions here, Megyn, that need to get answers to.
Do you think he caved to political pressure?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, I'll take him at his word, but what I don't really understand is after he lists this laundry list of violations, he comes to that conclusion. That's point number one. Point number two.
Well, but that's what he said. Just before you get to point number two, what he said was in the other cases, there was evidence of intentional deception or intention to undermine national security or obstruction of justice, and he didn't see her behavior rising to that level.
Yeah, your legal background is certainly deeper than mine. I do other things here. But the point is, she clearly lives above the law. Let me say this. He shredded the case that she had been making all year long. He shredded the things that she had been saying in her own defense all year long about her case.
So now that's a different issue. He put the lie. He put the lie to a bunch of her statements, and that seems pretty clear. So, but you tell me, do you think that's disqualifying for her?
Oh, sure I do. I think she clearly said things that were not true, and he basically gave us that. I think we need to know more, quite frankly. The other thing that concerns me is that she's just going to get away with this in the sense that she grossly was negligent. She mishandled classified information, and now she wants to be commander-in-chief. Here's the other thing. When I was Mitt Romney's running mate, I got classified briefings every week by the CIA, by national intelligence, very sensitive information, which you get as a candidate once the convention occurs. Comey said, short of prosecution, some kind of administration action should occur, bringing consequences. I think the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, should block her access to classified information, given how recklessly she handled this during the presidential campaign. If she becomes president, that's one thing, but I don't think she should get classified information, and I think the DNI should block it, given how recklessly she handled this from the start.
Let's take a look to see how President Obama feels about Hillary Clinton and whether that is likely to happen, if he has anything to say about it. Here he is in October 2015. Listen.
This is not a situation in which America's national security was endangered.
So, maybe or maybe not, according to the FBI director. Does the president owe the American people an update to his earlier statement? Because Comey says it may have been.
The president, I've heard him say things with such certainty that we know later on aren't the case. Look, obviously, as Comey said, people she was communicating with got hacked, and therefore she clearly could have been hacked. He certainly raises that possibility. What really just mystifies me is the case he makes and then the conclusion he draws. And what bothers me about this is the Clintons really are living above the law. They're being held by a different set of standards. That is clearly what this looks like.
Okay, so what
this is why we're going to have hearings, and this is why I think that Comey should give us all the publicly available information to see how and why they reach these conclusions.
How does this play out in your view? I mean, because you have been supporting Donald Trump. There have been some issues, but you've been supporting him. Do you believe this means that Donald Trump should be our next president?
Well, I endorsed Donald Trump about a month ago.
I know, but then you kind of get a little you waver depending on.
No, when he says things that I don't agree with, I'm going to speak my mind. When he says things I don't agree with, I'm going to speak my mind. I see a binary choice in front of us. It is Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Yes, Donald Trump is far better to be commander-in-chief than Hillary Clinton in my mind. I don't think Hillary Clinton is going to do any of the things that we need to do to get this country back on the right track. More importantly, I think she's been holding herself to a different set of standards, and I don't think that's representative of what we want to see in the White House.
How about Donald Trump today? Over the weekend, he tweeted out a picture that many have said includes an anti-Semitic slur. Here it is. They believe that this is improper use of the Star of David, and the suggestion here is clear. He denies it. You came out and said it's not appropriate to the use of anti-Semitic images. Do you believe he did that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see it, and I didn't see it, but obviously, if it's an anti-Semitic image, we shouldn't be doing these things. I don't think he put this up there. I think one of his campaign flunkies did this. I think they got to fix their new media strategies, and I think we should move on. But I don't think there's any place in a campaign for anything that can look like is an anti-Semitic image, and that's apparently what this looks like. And so I don't think that should be done. I think they should make sure that they put controls in place so that they don't make this kind of a mistake again.
Last question. Tonight at a rally, Donald Trump said Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, but he was very, very good at killing terrorists. In response to which, many people came out and started to go through the litany of very, very bad things that Saddam Hussein has done. Any thoughts from you on the praise he had for Hussein?
He was one of the 20th century's most evil people. He was up there. and he committed mass genocide against his own people using chemical weapons. Saddam Hussein was a bad guy.
Paul Ryan, any chance this convention is going to include some surprises from you? Any chance if the Republican Party turns to you and says, we want you, you do it?
He got the votes. He won the votes. He won it fair and square. It's just that simple as far as I'm concerned.
Great to see you, Mr. Speaker.
You too, Megyn. Take care.
All the best. In moments, we're going to hear from Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson and Democratic strategist Julie Roginski on this new Trump. Developing tonight, while most of the political world is focused on what the FBI found regarding Hillary Clinton's emails, Donald Trump is having to deal with some new fallout tonight over this tweet, hitting Hillary for being corrupt. Almost immediately after it went out on Saturday, some outraged critics suggested that it depicts a Star of David and that its message is anti-Semitic. In a moment, Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson and Democratic strategist Julie Roginski are here on that. But first, Fox News correspondent Peter Ducey has the latest. Peter?
Megyn, the debate boils down to whether or not you think a six-sided star looks more like a Star of David or a sheriff's badge. This weekend, it all started when the verified @RealDonaldTrump Twitter account posted the image on the left with text calling Hillary Clinton the most corrupt candidate ever printed on that star. Once social media users started criticizing the post, saying it looked like a Star of David, it was taken down, then reposted with a circle in place of the star. The Clinton campaign called this both anti-Semitic and part of a pattern, but Trump says the shape at the center of the controversy was not a symbol of the Jewish faith, instead a symbol of law enforcement, a badge. And his social media director, Dan Scavino, now tells us that, quote, the social media graphic used this weekend was not created by the campaign, nor was it sourced from an anti-Semitic site. It was lifted from an anti-Hillary Twitter user where countless images appear. The sheriff's badge, which is available under Microsoft's Shapes, fit with the theme of corrupt Hillary, and that is why I selected it. Trump himself now also accusing Hillary Clinton of using this to try to change the subject away from her emails. He says Clinton, through her surrogates, is just trying to divert attention from the dishonest behavior of herself and her husband. And it is worth pointing out that Trump's own daughter, Ivanka, is Jewish. She converted a few years ago when she married Jared Kushner, and Jared Kushner is now a major behind-the-scenes player at his father-in-law's campaign. Megyn.
Peter, thank you. And says he's never known his father-in-law to be in any way anti-Semitic. Joining me now to respond, Katrina Pearson and Julie Roginski. Julie, can you explain what is it about the tweet that is anti-Semitic? Like, what is, is it just the use of the Star of David?
On top of a pile of money, I mean, I think if you're Jewish, your tentacles are so incredibly raised by this, because this is a source, as he said, from an anti-Semitic tweeter. I mean, this is somebody who's tweeting this stuff, who's had a history of anti-Semitism, but more importantly than that, you've got people from David Duke to now Paul Ryan saying this is an anti-Semitic image. Clearly, the message is very obvious to people who understand this, and the history of this is so repugnant, because if you know anything about 20th century anti-Semitism, this is the kind of imagery that was used consistently in 1900s Russia, in 1930s Germany, so on and so forth. And Donald Trump has a history of this. It's not just this tweet. It's the fact that when he was asked to refute all the horrible anti-Semitic things that somebody was saying about, people were saying about a reporter that wrote an unflattering story about his wife, he said, quote, I don't have a message for my fans. When they were saying the most vile, atrocious anti-Semitic thing to her. When the Anti-Defamation League asked him to stop using the phrase America first because it has horrible connotations for American Jews going back to the 1930s, he refused to do that. You know, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is consistently a dog whistle, and I would venture to say not even a dog whistle, but a very overt message to the vilest, basest, white supremacist anti-Semites in this country, and there's no excuse for it.
Okay, first you'd have to really suspend all logic and reason to just say that this was obviously anti-Semitic, because it wasn't. The intent was definitely not there, which is why you saw the image that was changed. But really, I'm struck by Hillary Clinton's response, calling this particular image anti-Semitic, considering her hometown in Chicago, Illinois, Barack Obama's hometown. Cook County has a 6-point star yellow badge. So why is this all of a sudden anti-Semitic?
Because you throw it on top of money. And you throw it on top,
yes.
And you source it. And
Sheriff,
Katrina,
corruption, badge.
No, excuse me, Katrina. You source it from a bunch of tweeters who have a history of anti-Semitism and horrible, vile things that they say about Jews. You have consistently.
The media and the pundits are saying the source was an anti-Semitic.
Where was the source?
Someone else used it on an anti-Semitic website.
And you retweeted it?
This came from a Twitter account.
Should he stop it? You heard the speaker say somebody's got to get control of Trump's social media, because he continues to get himself in trouble on the Twitter.
Well, look, the speaker can say whatever he wants. This idea that this was somehow anti-Semitic is false, period. Yes, it was a
will there be
six-pointed
any
star.
changes to who controls the social media?
Well, I don't know. You have to ask Mr. Trump that if he decides to make changes.
Did Trump retweet that, or was it an
No, this was Dan Scavino, who already came out and said there was no intent here. Dan Scavino is married to a Jewish woman.
You know, that whole concept of Dan Scavino is married to a Jewish woman, Ivanka Trump is Jewish, that's the last refuge of anti-Semites and racists. Some of my best friends are black. Some of my best friends are Jewish. Give me a break.
It is a defense.
There is a consistent pattern here with Donald Trump. This is not a partisan thing.
I have to ask you before we go.
Yeah.
Do we have time for the soundbite? I want to hear the Donald Trump soundbite on Saddam Hussein. Watch.
Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, right? He was a bad guy, really bad guy. But you know what he did well? He killed terrorists. He did that so good. They didn't read him the rights. They didn't talk. They were a terrorist. It was over. Today, Iraq is Harvard for terrorism. You want to be a terrorist, you go to Iraq. It's like Harvard. Okay?
So Saddam Hussein, he killed and buried in mass graves about 300,000 people. And the rub on this, Katrina, is he should not be citing Saddam Hussein in any positive way, even if it's to kill terrorists.
Well, the idea is the destabilization of the Middle East from the simple fact that we have terrorism running rampant today. This last 2 weeks is quite obvious that we have a serious problem here, and Hillary Clinton was a part of that.
His critics are saying
Hussein has done
don't cite him in any way. Like when you gas your own people, you don't get to wind up in the mouth of a U.S. presidential
This is why it matters, because we're going to continue doing illegal things, going into sovereign nations, overthrowing governments, allowing terrorism to flourish if Hillary Clinton becomes president. That's why it's important.
Quickly.
Donald Trump wanted to go in and, quote unquote, take Iraq's oil. How is he going to do that? Go into the sovereign nation? Listen, Saddam Hussein went and rained Scud missiles upon Tel Aviv. There were plenty of Jews in Tel Aviv who suffered at the terrorism of Saddam Hussein.
He says if you're going to go in, get something out of it.
This is not a good day for Donald Trump and the Jewish community. I'll leave it at that.
All right. And yes, we will. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. So up next, more than 60 people are shot in one deadly holiday weekend in Chicago. And tonight, some want to know, where are the anti-gun Democrats now? We'll hear from radio host Kevin Jackson and Richard Fowler next. Developing tonight, it's been less than 2 weeks since House Democrats staged a 25-hour sit-in aimed at forcing a vote on guns in the wake of the Orlando terror attack. Today, Democrats took to the House floor to deliver more speeches on the need for gun reform. But as the Democrats go on about Orlando, gun violence in another city is being largely ignored. 4 people were killed, more than 60 shot over the July 4th holiday weekend in Chicago, a city that's already seen more than 2,000 shooting victims just this year and is expected to hit 700 homicides by year end. So where's the outrage over events in the president's adopted hometown? Kevin Jackson is a conservative radio host and Fox News contributor. Richard Fowler is a nationally syndicated radio host. Good to see you both. You tell me, Kevin, where is it?
Hey, 329 people killed so far. Black Lives Matter's protesting the gay parades. Black Lives Matter hasn't said a word. Where is it? It doesn't exist, because the outrage only occurs when it's a cop shooting somebody, or white, in particular, a white cop. And it's a shame, because you know what, Megyn? Next weekend, it'll be more killings. The weekend after that, more killings. People build entire radio shows and entire TV programs over knowing that Chicago is going to have massive murders all year long.
It's incredible, Richard. What of it?
Well, one, in the building behind me, John Lewis went up the speaker to demand a vote so we can have more gun control in this country. And to joining John Lewis was the representative from Chicago who stated in an article to The Hill, when it comes to what I believe in, I will get arrested because I'm seeing too much violence in Chicago. Something has to be done.
Because one representative of Chicago was there.
No,
they're talking about Orlando.
The entire caucus is trying to get gun reform done. Sadly, Chicago is suffering from a Washington transmitted disease. The lack of inaction from the building behind me, when a majority of Americans, according to the Pew Research polls, 85% of the public believe in background checks.
Is there
85% of the public believes
anything they're considering that would stop the gun violence in Chicago?
Listen, there's multiple bills. The bill that's on the floor right now.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, Megyn, first of all, Rahm Emanuel, he nailed it. Finally, he said, you know what? We've got a problem where the same people, the gang members, are committing these crimes. We put them in jail. Liberal policies allow these guys back on the streets. They take their illegal guns and they go and do the same thing.
How did they get an illegal gun,
It's a cycle. It's a cycle of
There's
liberalism.
a black market, Richard.
That's not for.
No,
I'll tell you
to worry about. No, Kevin, I'll tell you how they get it. According to the Democratic nominee for the new state's attorney, Illinois, she indicates they've only prosecuted 3 straw purchasers this past year, which is a person who can buy a gun who gives it to somebody who cannot buy a gun. So if we want to have a conversation about getting rid of illegal guns, let's stop straw purchasers.
Let Richard finish his point, then Kevin.
Why can't we agree on that, Kevin? Why can't we stop straw purchasers? That's illegal. Why can't we go after them?
Richard, the reason why you always come back with this type of an argument, legal gun owners, the people, the law-abiding citizens of Chicago, the law-abiding citizens of Chicago who need to carry guns with concealed carry or whatever, you don't care about them. The very people that sat in the Congress and did that sit-in, 26 of them have guns. So it's so disingenuous for you.
The hypocrisy.
No, the only thing you care about, you haven't even heard anything about what I said about the criminals
I heard
that are
everything you said.
We got to go. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, Richard. Go.
I'm perfectly okay with folks who want a gun to go get a gun. I have a problem with people who go get a gun and sell it to a criminal. That's against the law. They do it. Nobody cracks down on it because the NRA won't let them do it.
Nicely done. Great to see you both.
That may
we'll
be
be right
fine,
back.
but how about the
We'll be right back. Those who raise questions about Hillary Clinton's email practices, her campaign chairman said this in March.
This is an absurdity.
This is an absurdity. Thoughts on that? Facebook.com/The Kelly File, on Twitter @Megyn Kelly. Thanks.